Well, I pulled the wrong tooth. Got the one with the nugget in it.
So you pulled the wrong tooth.
How about that?
I'm going to give you just 15 minutes to get out of town.
Last time they gave me 20 minutes.
Hello, listening people.
Hello.
You're listening to Spit and Polish Presents Pictures Powwow. I am one of your hosts, Ryan Sawinski.
And I'm one of your hosts, Bartek.
How are you, Bartek?
Good, Ryan. How are you?
I'm very well. We are doing our weekly show, Pictures Powwow, the show in which we are both always spitting and we both have to be Polish. That's why we're called Spit and Polish. Mm-hmm. In case you couldn't pick that up, it's a good joke.
Yes, and we punch well, which is a pow, and then we go wow.
Yeah, exactly, and we just picture it all happening. So, Bartek, what is Pictures Powwow? What do we do?
Pictures Powwow is the hit new show from Spit and Polish Presents. It is the show in which we recommend movies to each other, or we don't recommend movies sometimes.
Yeah, we have other people recommend them.
Yes.
As threats.
And then we talk about whether they're worthy of a recommendation or not.
I'm just giving full disclosure. We do have the recommendation to do Jack and Jill at some point from a listening person, and I'm fucking terrified. I'm fucking miserable. And I've just seen The Irishman, so it's like, oh, good Al Pacino? And now I'm worried that I'm going to have to see not Al Pacino, but Dunkachino.
Yes.
I'm fucking frightened. So whose recommendation is it this time round? Are we doing Dunkachino?
No, we are doing The Paleface.
The Paleface? Who recommended this?
It was you, Ryan.
It was me. I wanted you to say that. I asked that first. It's like, what are we watching? Who recommended it? And you're like, we're watching The Paleface. And then I'm like, is it me who recommended it? Or was it you? Or was it another person? Who out there is recommending the 1948 Bob Hope Jane Russell classic, The Paleface? It's me. I recommended it.
Me and Slewinski.
Bartek, would you recommend that we did this episode alone? Just us two?
I would, but,
oh, okay, goodbye, guests.
but I think we should challenge ourselves.
Okay, I'm up for a challenge if you are. Contrary to the belief that I'm not, I am.
It was my idea, but I'm not up for it.
So, who are we joined by?
We are joined by the Contrarians from the Contrarians Podcast. These are Julio, I almost said Julio, Julio and Alex. Hello.
Hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
Howdy from Texas.
Hi.
Which one's which? Who's who?
You can tell.
All right, Alex, good one. Now drop the accent. Get Julio up here.
They said howdy.
They said howdy. You know that they're from Texas.
We should have said Jaday.
Yeah, we should have said good day. Good day, good day.
Jaday.
Jaday. Jamais, the greatest female character ever
Simon,
written.
you know what I mean.
Yeah, so Contrarians, tell us about your...
Wait, real quick, Jamae, was that a Summer Heights High reference?
Yeah, she's an icon down here. She was in 3 or 4 shows. She was in
Tremendous.
the show called...
I
I
was
was in 3, yeah.
There was a show before Summer Heights High that was actually really popular down here called
We Can Be Heroes.
We Can Be Heroes, and that's where she first started. That's actually heavily referenced in Summer Heights High.
Yeah.
And then she had her own show. So
Yeah,
that's that's the Chris
humongous-
Lilly universe.
Yeah, Angry Boys I was a massive fan of that show.
Oh yeah, the 2
I have
deaf
no idea
boys
what you
in
guys are
that.
talking about.
Oh, Chris Lilly,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Is this wrestling?
Yeah, no, man. It's Australian comedy or wrestling in the Outback.
Yeah.
Where wrestling, whether or not a show should have blackface or not, still, Angry Boys. That show, Angry Boys, had 2 characters. The deaf
twins, yeah.
twin. The deaf twin was in the first show, We Can Be Heroes.
Yeah, the whole point of We Can Be Heroes is we have a thing called Australian of the Year, and that show was all about 5 weird contestants, and one of them, the non-deaf one, was gonna donate his eardrum to the deaf one.
So, Bartek,
Yes?
did Alex or Julio win Australian of the Year?
I think so.
Good. Because I want to know more about these guys, who they are, what their podcast is. Have we guessed it on it before?
We
I don't know.
have,
Have we? Okay.
Yes, and I believe they are the Americans of the Year.
I was gonna ask them that information, but you can tell me about
You were
their
looking
show.
at me. You weren't looking at Texas.
I'm sorry, I should look at a country across the world from me.
It's a state, but
At the center of the world. Texas is its own country, man. So, guys, tell us about your
true.
show and who you are. Tell us your journey to take down the Rotten Tomatoes system.
Who we are. We are the Contrarians. We rage against the Rotten Tomatoes machine, as you said. It's basically a little bit like your underappreciated masterpieces show that you guys used to do.
Yep.
Except that we don't usually love the movies that we talk about, even when we talk about them positively.
Oh, so
we
you're
take a movie
jerks.
that's
Okay.
either. Some people may think so. No, we take a movie that's either fresh or rotten according to Rotten Tomatoes, and we argue the opposite. So if a movie's fresh, the first half of our show is where we talk about everything that's wrong with that movie, and if a movie's rotten, we do the opposite. We talk about everything that's fresh on it, and then on the second half of the show, Real Talk, we tell you how we really feel. Sometimes it matches, sometimes it doesn't.
It all comes from a place. Julio and I used to work together at a movie theater, and it comes from a place of he and I would get equally as annoyed with both patrons and fellow coworkers when they relied on Rotten Tomatoes as some source of truth, and basically founded this with the idea of you can find a negative in anything if you want to, and you can also be over the moon about anything if you want to. It's just all about your perspective and living the life of a professional contrarian.
Because go figure, art is subjective. and
Unless
Rotten Tomatoes
it's
does not hold the truth.
Unless it's Marvel, then it's not cinema. So,
Confirmed.
confirmed. I can confirm. It's not cinema. Take that, James Gunn. So, what is one of the movies that you guys have covered that you got a lot of pushback for, would you say? What are some of these movies that, you've come in on and people are like, whoa, 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 how could you talk about Christmas with the Cranks like that?
Well, y'all are literally the only person that have given us pushback about Christmas with the Cranks.
And Johnny
You
Mnemonic.
are alone in the world.
Johnny Mnemonic.
And Johnny Mnemonic.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Yeah. No.
Jaws was the first big one we did that I think a lot of people that didn't understand our gimmick, for lack of a better term, were like, how can you trash Jaws? It's like, well, you should
like this.
It's really easy. It's, as Julio said, it's anti-shark propaganda.
Yeah. It's more recently. I mean, the Nightmare on Elm Street episode kind of got people riled up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For two reasons. One, because in Contrarians Corner, in the first half of the show, it's a fresh movie, so we trashed it in the first half of the show, and then the second half of the show, I actually didn't like it, so I trashed it again.
It was
Much to Alex's dismay.
Oh.
It's actually funny. Literally just today, someone texted me. They went back and listened to our face-off episode, and they're like, I was getting so pissed with y'all breaking it down, all the holes in it, and then I listened to it, and I was like, my God, they're right. I've been living a lie.
Yeah, we did the exact same when we did Unappreciated Masterpieces, in which we just kind of went, hey, Big Fat Liar has a lot more merit than people want to give it. Did Paul Giamatti deserve a Razzie nomination? Hell no. Shining got a Razzie nomination. Did that deserve it? No, thanks. So, we covered for this episode the Paleface.
we are going to cover.
Well, we are covering. We're going to. We covered it. We're done. Thanks for joining us.
We're recording
No,
this after the episode.
So,
By the time they're listening to this, it has been covered.
it has been covered. This is in the past now. So, for the listening people who have not seen it, we're going to be talking about it in depth. We're going to mention all the plots and stuff. So, if you haven't seen it, go away, come back, watch it. It's a fun time. It's short. It's old. It's fun. It's come back, give it a listen, give us a listen. Or if you're not caring, we're just going to talk about what happened. So, brief summary, just to kind of get that out of the way of the plot. This is kind of a satire on the Virginian classic Western. So basically, Jane Russell, Calamity Jane, is hired by the government to stop some people funneling weapons to the Native Americans, and she has to partner up with someone, but that someone died, so she gets a patsy, who is Bob Hope, to come join her without knowing, and he accidentally becomes the hero of the West, and hilarity ensues. That's kind of the basic plot of it. and you just have
Do
Bob,
we want to?
Bob Hope there. Go on.
Do we want to explain the crossover or the correlation between this and the episode y'all guested for?
Yes, we will.
Our theme.
Okay.
The theme that this is the same director. So we guested on the Contrarian Podcast a little while back. We did The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Also 1948 movie, I think, right? Or 1946?
Thereabouts.
47.
47. Let's call it a day and say 49. So, and it was by the same director of this movie and some comedic beats. I wouldn't even say similar, but just kind of like this 1940s, 50s era comedy stylings in which you have a comedic actor, stand-up comedian, just kind of having an excuse to be in a movie and just kind of riff and do gags, and there's like loose plotting. Walter Mitty, I guess you could argue, has more plots because it's surreal, but this one has more plot in terms of a 3-act structure narrative, and it's a genre piece. Like, this is a Western. Pretty simple.
I guess both sort of have elements like a conspiracy going on.
Yeah. So that's our kind of connection. I chose this movie to do it with you guys because when we were on your show, we talked about this era of comedy and how I kind of preferred this film over Secret Life of Walter Mitty. I think the direction and some of the stuff was a little bit more fine-tuned, while in Walter Mitty there's a few more kind of sloppy elements, but also some really praiseworthy elements. So I was like, well, we talked about Paleface, but how about we actually get these guys to watch it? Because I don't believe that you guys would have watched it after I talked about it. Did you? Tell us your history with this movie. Do you have one?
I had never seen it. I like Bob Hope.
So we do this podcast called The Contrarians, and we invited these two Australian podcasters, and one of them recommended the Paleface. That's pretty much the history. Honestly, I don't know about you, Alex. This is my first Bob Hope movie, my first Jane Russell movie.
First Bob Hope?
I think it's as far as...
Wow.
Yeah. As far as... I don't know. I grew up in America, which Julio did not, if you can't tell by the accent, but...
Well, I thought
Bob
you
Hope
were the one from another country. Wow, I'm really thrown off now.
I also didn't grow up.
Well, I am from Texas, so I'm technically not from America. I'm from Texas.
Yeah, you're right. It succeeded, yeah.
Yeah, Bob Hope, especially in the time period I grew up in, was the America's granddad type thing. So I'm very familiar with him, but I had never seen this movie before. And I'm,
okay.
Truthfully speaking, glad it was recommended. I had a lark of a time.
Yeah, it's
Lark.
kind of
oh boy.
it's a kind of movie that I definitely need a push to watch it. I'm generally, and I think I might have mentioned it when we did our episode, the Walter Mitty episode. I have a bit of a hard time getting into like the classics, like movies from this era, because it feels a little intimidating. I have to kind of adjust my expectations because the type of comedy is different. The type of acting is different to what we're used to right now. So I have to really reset all everything that I expect from a movie.
You have to adjust.
So I need to adjust it so I can just enjoy it the way that it's meant to be enjoyed.
Especially with the genre that we're doing, which is comedy. Comedy, there's some of the basic elements here that are still universal and timeless, and then there's some that, I wouldn't say aren't still done. I mean, the one thing that probably isn't still done in comedies that is done in this movie is a script. This one has one. There's obviously ad-libbing going on throughout the whole movie, but you can tell there's a script.
I got the feeling that Bob Hope was just running his mouth the entire time.
And it's worth it.
But still, yeah, even then, they keep it tight and they don't just let him riff for 10 minutes at a time.
Right, they pick the one joke and then they edited everything out. So that's welcome.
Bartek, what about you? What's your history with the Paleface?
Well, Ryan, I'm an artist.
Okay.
And back in 2014, I was going to do a Western play with yourself and a few others.
Yes, for university, yes.
Yes, and we wanted it to be a play that was inspired by, the basic stories that Westerns tell, but also more comedic types of Westerns.
Yeah.
And someone in the group, I believe it was Ryan...
Me?
lent out different Western DVDs to everyone in the group, and the one that I got was The Paleface.
Yeah.
And I watched it back then, 2014, enjoyed it, and now I'm back here again to see it a second time and talk about it for reals.
So, that's fair. My history with this movie is I grew up with this movie. My parents are big Bob Hope fans, especially my dad. I grew up with Bob Hope movies a lot of them. The ones that stand out are The Paleface and The Princess and the Pirate. Those are two that stand out. And we had a VHS copy of this that was recorded when it was being played on TV, so it had all the old ads included. And
Nice.
I was just saying to Bartek, I had watched this movie more times on the old videotape than I've watched it since I've owned it on DVD for the last, 9 years. Because I just watched it so much. I would watch the ads, and it would just be, funny to watch these old ads and see how some things have and haven't changed. But the core thing is, this movie is very special to me. This is one of those movies that no matter, and we all have a movie like this, or a piece of media, music, TV show, whatever, in which no matter what mood you're in, if you're really sad, if you're really angry, whatever, this is a pick-me-up type movie. This movie, I can watch this and it'll automatically wipe away whatever negativity I have and just put me back into that world of innocence and love and happiness and joy that I experienced when I watched it for the first time and numerous times. And it just kind of, for me, is a comfort movie, as well as me being a big fan of comedy, especially in movies as well. Seeing the art of comedy and how it's implemented with expertise in this movie, in my opinion. And I find most of it pretty much ages pretty well, considering also it's a genre piece about the Old West. And a lot of these gags and jokes are still unique and fun. And, you also see with it how a lot of comedians and filmmakers have gotten a lot from this movie. Like, you watch this movie and you're like, if they made this in 1980, in the 1980s, it would have been Chevy Chase as Paleface. He would have been... And Chevy Chase has stated that Bob Hope is the guy that he emulates. And you just see yep. I was saying to Bartek before we recorded, if we had to remake this today, I could think of so many people for Jane Russell. I'm struggling to find an A-lister, like someone like Bob Hope was, to play Potter, because a lot of comedic actors I think of play more douchebags than just out-and-out cowards, which is what Bob Hope is in this movie. He's a coward. So that's my history with this movie, and I recommended it for this because we've been away from the podcast for a while. I wanted to have some guests, and like I said, you guys, we talked about it on your podcast, but also, since our new format, I haven't had the chance to really talk about some of my top movies, and this is definitely, for just pure comedy, this is probably my number one comedy for just pure comedy, and then
Oh, wow.
I love planes, trains, and automobiles, but that gives me more than just comedy. That gives me a lot of emotions as well, of a different variety. But for just pure comedy, this is my go-to.
Yeah, I thought I remember you saying that sometime a few years ago.
Yeah. This is how much this movie means to me. So I was like, let's put it on the list and give it to people who haven't seen it before.
All right, let me take off then off my notes all the negatives that I found in the movie.
No, there's negatives, of course. We have to discuss with every movie. There's always
I
negatives.
was about to say there's the slightly problematic portrayal of Native Americans.
Well,
but...
we'll get into that because I was actually having a heated discussion about this with my parents because I was talking to them and I'm like, I'm gonna have to talk about the racism discussion, and it got heated. But Bartek, for you having to revisit it, how did you feel?
Yeah, it felt like I was seeing an old acquaintance again that I really enjoyed my experience with.
Were there any moments that stood out to you? Anything funny that really resonated with you?
A couple of the funny bits in this film were a bit more expected because you've mentioned them a few times throughout the years, like the whole when he's leaving the bar to do the fight and he's getting advice from people and he's mixing them up.
Yeah.
You always talk about the shaving scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mean? Yeah. The one with the arrows. Yeah.
It was funny to see that again because I've heard so much about it since I've seen it. I just remembered Bob Hope being the big thing about the film when I watched it the first time, and seeing it again. He was there because our previous episode that we've done on Pictures Powwow was on the Pink Panther from 1963, and one of the things that we were saying was that as great as Peter Sellers was, he wasn't in it as much as other characters. But in this film, the equivalent is Bob Hope, and he's all the way through pretty much.
I mean, it takes 15 minutes to get to him, but we get him.
After those 15 minutes, though, you've got him.
Just to ask you some more questions, Bartek. Did you find this funny? as a movie? Did you still find it funny even though it's a movie from back in the day? Because you're not really acquainted with this era of comedy either.
No, I'm not. But just like Multimedia, I feel there's like a sort of timeless element to it. Like the language isn't so different today, like, you know, Shakespearean Old English or anything like that. It's all comprehensive, just pure comedy, as you were saying, I guess.
And the datedness, for me, doesn't truly factor in as strong as, say, Walter Mitty, where Walter Mitty was set in the contemporary day of 1948, the 1940s. Well, this is set in the, you know, in the West, in the olden
days of
frontier
the period
days.
it was made.
Even though you have the anachronism of Bob Hope being very, like, modern and being like, hey, I'm not taking this too seriously. All right, what about you guys? How did you guys feel going into this movie, not knowing too much about it? And did you guys find it funny?
Julio?
Oh, well, I thought we were saving myself for last, since I think that I'm gonna be the most negative take. But
Okay, that's fine. Then I'll
not
lead
negative.
off with it. And number one, it's 90 minutes, so I'm never going to be mad about going into a 90-minute movie. Two, like I said, knowing Bob Hope and enjoying what I had seen up until this point, I was pretty excited about it. And I've mentioned on our podcast before, and I think even on the Walter Mitty one I might have mentioned, I so very much get off on watching these old movies with the clearly giant sound stages and big production sets built. It's just such a invigorating thing to watch.
Yeah, matte paintings and rear projection.
Yes, exactly. Yes, because it's such a lost. It doesn't happen anymore. And as far as the plot goes, it's simple. It's easy to follow. As far as the laughs, there were two moments in particular that I like audibly like belly laughed, and one of them was the following the shaving scene where he's in the barrel and he's trying to shoot at the Indians and his gun's pointed straight down at the ground and he's firing it. And then
yeah,
the second part that killed me was when he he puts a nail on the door of his hotel room and hangs the sign that says "Beware Mad Dog" on it. I thought that was just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
It's one of those things too. I love so much these old movies where the climax happens and then the movie's over within 90 seconds. I just absolutely love it.
Would you say, because we talked about this with Secret Life of Walter Mitty, I don't want to harp on that, but we found the ending of that way more abrupt. Did you find it as abrupt or too abrupt in this movie?
No, it's not abrupt. It just ends the way it should, and they get married. And also, one thing I mentioned to Julio before we got on the line with y'all was I don't know of a movie from the 40s, or at least I never heard of a movie from the 40s that breaks the fourth wall like this movie does to conclude.
Well, you need to watch more Bob Hope movies. That's the answer to that. That's the answer to that. You would love Son of Paleface. But Son of Paleface would be your jam if you liked some fourth wall breaks. That one has the very beginning, just Bob Hope and his girlfriend, like he's the son of Paleface, he's like coming out of Harvard and he's talking to his girlfriend, and the movie just pauses and Bob Hope just goes, "See that charming young lady there? That's this actress." It just tells you, and then and see the back of that gentleman's lovely head? You should see the front. That's my face. And just kind of directs you on like, this is me. I'm in the movie too. Or Princess and the Pirate.
Fair enough.
It has this text crawl. It's like this murderous Captain Hook pirate, like who's murdering everyone. And then a little bubble appears on the screen with Bob Hope's face in it, and he just goes, "Don't worry, folks. That's not me. I come in later. I play an utter coward." So you need to just watch more Bob Hope. So
that's fair enough. It caught me off guard, and yeah, the final joke is great too, where she gets dragged away. But not to steal your thunder, Ryan, or transition, but I think Julio's over here seething. He's ready to. He's ready to just unload.
Julio. Okay, let's hear from you, Julio. How was your experience going into this? Did you enjoy yourself? Did you find it funny?
I found it fine. It was a pleasant movie. It was good. I think that I had, I had a couple good laughs and then just mostly chuckles throughout. I found myself liking Bob Hope a lot more before he became an actual cowboy. When he started just strutting around, I didn't find him as funny.
Yeah.
Oh no! But I'm saying that I found him funnier. Before he started putting on the airs. I really laughed. I laughed really hard when right after he thinks he's killed like all these Native Americans, and he's like, "Well, I'd like to say some words," and then somebody goes like, "We need to get out of here before they come back." And he's like, "That's what I wanted to say," or something. He just leaves. And then also, like Bartek mentioned, the whole sequence where he's heading to the duel. And people keep giving him different bits of advice, and he keeps like trying to remember them. And then, of course, he gets them all mixed up as the sequence goes on. Yeah, that was also really funny. But for the most part, it was
go on.
Oh, I was saying, for the most part, it was a pleasant movie.
Yeah.
But it was not like I was not bursting out laughing all the time. It was just good. I think that. It definitely was enough to hook me to want to see more, want to watch more Bob Hope stuff. I definitely enjoyed the Jane Russell character.
Yes, Calamity
She's
Jane.
A badass.
Yeah,
she's
going
hot as
back
shit
to.
too.
Yes, but
Yeah,
going back to the
there's
a little
no
bit
lie
of
there.
the Walter Mitty discussion that we had. I had that problem with the female character there, where I kind of felt that she was there just so that he would have somebody to fall in love with, and here. It was a complete opposite, where Jane Russell seemed to have she had an agenda, she had goals, she was...
That first scene where she comes out of the bath with the two pistols loaded and just fires off on those dudes, I was like, holy shit, what a badass.
Yeah, she's great.
Amazing. I love her. That image of her in the pantaloons and whatnot coming out of the shower, being like, looking for me, fellas, and just like shoots them all. And it's just like, not only is that badass, it's just like that vintage hot. Like that image is just like, now see, now this is how the old movies just showed you. Now this is just hot. That's me. I'm just like, there's nothing. We need more Jane Russell and pantaloons shooting guys, and then just being like cold blooded about it. Like no remorse. I've just murdered like 4 guys.
But see, and that's where the movie kind of falters for me, because after establishing how strong she is, I did not buy for a second that she would have real feelings for Bob Hope.
Okay.
So when like at the end, when like the turn is that they're both captured, and she's like, you know what, I love you. I didn't see it coming. I totally buy that she would have. I thought it was actually really cool that at one point in the story she's just using him, and she's more than willing to sacrifice him to achieve her goals. And now I knew that the turn was coming, where she was going to kind of find her humanity and realize, well, I can't do that. And but that's one thing. Falling in love with him, it's a completely different thing. So I had trouble with that little turn of the plot, and of course, that leading to them getting married. It was too much.
I mean, they were already
me.
married.
So it kind of lost me
technically,
toward
they were already married in that point in the movie. It's just at the end, right, where they have the honeymoon. I think that's just like their little like way of just being like, yeah, see, they all ended happy. I get what you're saying about the romance.
Not annulling their marriage.
Yeah, I mean, well, I get what you're saying about the romance. It's one of these things. Of course, me growing up with this, I don't mind it. I think it could be stronger, but at the same time, with a movie like this, you just want it to be funnier. Like, you just want it to be more funny than the, like, soapy romance that they had in a lot of these movies. Like, in the second one, it has way more romance. There's a freaking love triangle in it. So, and there's a horse involved. But,
Jesus.
Roy Rogers' horse, Trigger. Cock blocks Bob Hope at every turn. But I get what you're saying with that aspect of the movie, but I think, like, it is just that cheesy, like, it's a base comedy romance where it's like, this isn't about their great romance. Like, yeah, you need her to turn and be more kind and sympathetic. I don't think that she betrayed her character by showing love too much. It didn't feel like too much of a betrayal. It just felt like, yeah, you could have spent more time on this if you really wanted, but at the same time, I just want to see more Bob Hope being a dentist, That's kind of what I'm here for.
I can agree with the whole notion of, spending more time on it, but I can buy the fact simply because it feels like this is the first time she's really spent a lot of time with such a normal man and seeing like his positives and negatives.
And she's, he's dumb and he's selfish and he's cowardice. But she also sees throughout the journey of the movie that he is as much of a snake as he is. He's actually a pretty genuine guy, and he's actually pretty a good guy, even though he's got these coward-like tendencies. And when he gets inflated his ego of being this cowboy, that is when you just see, like, oh, right, this is the kind of guy, if you give this type of power to him, he's just going to be drunk on power, and that's not great. So Jane Russell has to take it back from him eventually.
But then as soon as he puts up, like, the Beware Mad Dog sign, he's back to normal.
Well, somewhat, because then she wants him again. One of my favorite comedic scenes, just to talk about, is his introduction as the dentist, and that whole sequence, every moment in it is fantastic. One of the things I like is just a simple thing of costume design is his bow tie is a clip-on bow tie, and it's just too small, like it's but not comedically to the point of too obvious of a gag, but when you look at it, it's annoyingly just a little bit too small just to add to this. He's such a schmo, as he calls himself. And when he's going over that cowboy and the cowboy guy like swallows his clip-on bow tie and he gets it out of his mouth and he's like, I have one just like it. And he's just like, the idea that he thinks that this guy has in his mouth a similar bow tie, not his, just some bow ties just in this guy's mouth. The whole gag of that scene of like, you have the fact that he's clearly not knowing what to do as a dentist and he's like reading the manual.
I love the manual bit.
And he rips out the page when the guy's correct. But the big thing is I love the laughing gas and how that's implemented and how he's accidentally sniffing it and then on purposely sniffing it, and the whole comedic joy of him ripping out the wrong tooth and these two having what would be a threatening altercation, but they're laughing and being so joyous about it. And one of my favorite quips is just like, I'm going to give you 15 minutes to get out of town. It's like, the last time gave me 20. And he's just like, punches him, he goes over the thing. Bob Hope is cracking so many jokes in this movie. It's just gunfire. Like, and the humor for me, like I said, I've grown up with this movie. So a lot of this is just ingratiated itself into my life. Like, these are jokes that I make in life. There's a joke that in my brain, I don't remember it, but when I see it happen on screen, I'm like, oh, here it is. When we were talking about before, when he wants to give that speech after he's killed all the Native Americans, there's this old guy who's just like, here, son, you can have my gun. And he casually just goes, thanks. And he just goes, thanks, Dad. Just like,
oh, yeah, because you called him son.
And I've done that in life so many times when people have called me son and they're not my dad. I'm like, oh, thanks, Dad. And just stuff like that. And it's just like these little nuggets like that, or classic lines like, brave men run in my family. And he just says it so casually. And you're like, yeah, I bet they do.
I love the play on words of, or not a play on words, but just the extreme of the cliche when he's at the bar and give me 4 fingers of whatever the liquor is, and then and a thumb, and downs the whole thing.
Like,
yeah, there's a moment that, speaking of that dentist sequence at the beginning, I mean, that's the movie stopping so Bob Hope can just do his thing, which is great because he does it really well. And I was honestly, because that's his introduction, I thought the movie was gonna be a lot more of that, where we're gonna have to, like, the story was gonna move along and then we're gonna stop so that he would do something.
Yeah.
But I can't really think of another sequence in the movie that's specifically just Bob Hope kind of putting on a show while the story stops.
That's the brilliance of it. It's his introduction.
Yeah, it's his intro. We get the understanding of he's slimy, he's dumb, he's a coward, he's opportunistic, he's also the meet cute. Obviously, they meet each other. And all of these things, and he's a bit of a scoundrel. You do get another scene, like we said, the shaving scene. That's just kind of classic Bob Hope, like hijinks of like, who fires arrows? Cupid? No, that's too silly. William Tell? No, silly. No apple. And of course, you get his song. Of course, Buttons and Bows, the Oscar-winning song that beat out.
My favorite part of the movie.
Yeah, here's something too. With all these old movies, even Son of Paleface gets this wrong. This movie has songs in it, only 2, and they work great. Even though the second song is lesser, even though that song's great because it's her talking about what a whore she is, because she's talking about working on the corner, any old corner, to get any old guy at any old time of day. The songs fit into the narrative. They're not just like, it's a musical. It's just like, this character is just singing, and they're doing it because they're on a long trip to nowhere in particular, so he's just going to whip out his little accordion thing, sing Buttons and Bows. It's going to be cute, And then later you have the woman at the bar singing the song to entertain everyone. There you go. It's just natural songs. Well, in other movies, even The Son of Paleface, it just is a musical for no apparent reason other than we got to fill out time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was our big complaint with the previous episode.
Yeah. Bartek,
Yes.
what did you think of Buttons and Bows as a song?
Yeah, it was a cute song. I liked it.
Did it deserve an Oscar over the Woody Woodpecker theme?
How
'Cause
does
it did.
How does the Woody Woodpecker theme go again?
I can't remember, but it...
Well then,
There you go, take
I
that.
remember how something I've heard goes, but not something I haven't heard probably goes.
Yeah, I love Buttons and Bows. Fun fact for you two, for you three, I guess, all of you, all three listening
Fun fact
people.
for you too, Ryan.
Okay, at my wedding, when we finished it all and we walked out of the venue, our walking out song was Buttons and Bows,
Oh.
the Bob Hope.
Nice.
That's adorable.
The Bob Hope version, because there's one by Diana Shaw and then eventually the Andrew sisters.
And then you went outside.
Not the
and there were
Jay-Z
randoms,
version.
right?
The Jay-Z version would be amazing. I'd love Snoop Dogg's take. Yeah, or LL Cool J.
Buttons and bitches.
Yeah. That song means a lot. I love it. You know what I love about that song too? It's also funny because there comes that point when he's speaking really quickly, like he's getting every word out.
And he drains the entire accordion and
As
he has
his
to pull
breath-
it all the way back out.
And it's just a simple thing.
Yeah.
You didn't need it there, but it adds to it because it makes it comedic. It makes it a comedic thing. So how did you guys feel about the two musical numbers? Did you think they were integrated well into it, or did you kind of feel like, oh, here we go, it's that old movie cliche where we've got to have them sing? And did you like
So
them both?
Yeah, for my take, I obviously can't speak for my Peruvian counterpart, but for me, it's a lot of these older movies you watch and that, Sound of Music, things like that. It feels like it's just the movie is just a bunch of bridges to the next musical number. With this, it seems like they just came up and it was part of the story and it was fine. And that's always my personal struggle with musicals in particular and movies in general that feature original songs that are sang by the actors is the dichotomy and the balance between the two of incorporating them into the story to where it doesn't feel forced. It just feels like it's part of it. And I thought this movie did that just fine. Like when they came up, it felt like it was the natural progression of the movie.
Yeah. And did you enjoy the songs?
Yeah. Buttons and Bows is an adorable little ditty. I absolutely loved it. And the saloon too, the songs that are sang there, they match the tone of the movie, the time period it's set in, the characters that sing them. It all makes sense.
Yeah.
And for that, I enjoyed it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a big musical fan, so far more so than Alex. So
Yes.
I have no problem with characters breaking into song, but I think I just said it. The Bob Hope song is easily my favorite part of the movie. It is just so. It's not just that it's really cute, but it was such a nice character moment for him because up till then, he's been just kind of an idiot and kind of a weasel but here it's just him. You get to see a very sympathetic side of him.
Yeah.
He's just, well, this is life now, and I'm just singing.
And it puts you at ease as a viewer too, because of how relaxed he is, and the sun's setting on him and everything. Yeah, it really helps.
And
you have those cutaways to Jane Russell, which I think helps a lot. This is the one moment where I would say I can buy some sort of chemistry between them. I think if we had like a few more things like this throughout the movie, I would be able to buy more the final declaration of love. But here, you can see that she doesn't dislike it. He's singing and she's like, all right, I can put up with
it
this.
eventually puts her to sleep, if I remember correctly.
I thought she was asleep.
Right, yeah.
No, she's awake at the start and it kind of
Right.
gently guides her to sleep because he's doing it for her.
Yeah.
I also there's a dramatic, if I'm correct, the dramatic irony there of he's singing this song while they're slowly going towards their demise in Indian country because they've been taken off track because he's an idiot. So there's like that dramatic irony there too of, he's leading these people to die accidentally, but it's his fault still. And then, it all goes into the snowball effect of him accidentally being misconstrued into hero. Here's the thing about this movie. He's a coward. He's deplorable, But there's a charm there because Bob Hope's charming. But I think one of the things that makes it is when you get to that point when he accidentally becomes a hero, what makes it work for me, and I think a lot of modern comedies could probably fall on this, is he genuinely believes it. He isn't aware that he's a liar. He isn't manipulating anyone in that regard. He genuinely was like, wow, I didn't know I had this in me. And then eventually that becomes an ego trip, but not in a too toxic way, in a cartoony way, when here's this one line that just cracks me up because the voice he used, where he's like, he dumb plum riled me. And it's like this weird, really deep, fake cowboy voice. And it's just like so odd. And every time he has a big ego boost, they just knock him down. He has a drink and he can barely handle it. And he's like, is that all you got? Nothing stronger, huh?
But he believes that because he is supposedly a hero, he should be able to take it. So he
yeah, exactly.
acts like he can.
There's something wonderful about the comedic performance from Bob Hope and the movie, just knowing this is when we stop him from going too overboard of being an egotist, and this is when we knock him down a peg. We always know that we have to knock him down a peg so that the audience can still relate to him. Of course, you have the moment in which he has to decide whether he's going to be a man or a mouse, and he has his inner conscious talking to him to tell him to go back and save her and not be a coward. That's like his big moment, and he actually does it, which is wonderful. Any other comedy moments?
I just remember I was gonna say I just remember my other big laugh out loud moment. It's right after when she asks him to go hide in the morgue for find out who's picking up the
the
dynamite.
Undertakers.
Yeah. And the old guy, was he a blacksmith? The old guy that
the Undertaker
gets killed, right?
Oh yeah, the old blacksmith guy. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, the blacksmith.
The blacksmith, right?
Oh, yeah.
Her contact. And he's just like dead on the floor. And Bob Hope sees him, and he's like, "Who's this guy? Somebody else that you kissed?"
Well, he first greets him. He's like, "Hey, I'll catch you up later." And he's like, "Oh wait, who's this?"
He had an appropriately big reaction.
Yeah, he was appropriately big, and she just kept it vague as shit. She's like, and he's like, "Who is this?" Somebody kissed. Because of course, the running gag is every time he thinks he kisses her, or he thinks he kisses her, he gets knocked on the back of the head and he sees stars, and then you have the gag at the end when he actually gets a real kiss from her and he's like looking around for where the stars. And it's a nice little moment. Go on.
Yeah, my favorite reoccurring gag throughout the movie is every time he talks about how many Indians he killed, the number raises, and she's always there to bring him back down. And that's to your point about how this is missing from so many different things. The character that believes he's right, that's just not comedy. That's across the board right now in all forms of film and television. You, as a viewer, can either relate, sympathize, empathize, or become infuriated with a character that believes they're right. And in this case, you just laugh at how big of a doofus he is every time that the number grows. I think it's by the last count
17
at the end of the movie. He's just
that's my favorite gag. That's probably my favorite quip gag when she's like, "Stop it! Tell the truth!" And he's like, "Okay, 11."
And you know what? Because of the pace of that scene, I actually believe yes, finally he's told the truth. And then she'll be like, "No, he didn't do anything." I'm like, "Oh wait, that is right."
Because she's already told him that he hasn't done it.
Yeah.
So it's just
So I believed him when he said
11. That is a great recurring gag. I love that kind of there's so many good little recurring gags. Like you have the falling off the horse kind of thing.
I like the horse one.
You like the horse one. I like any time that he got kissed and it's like dunk. There's lots of little fun things. When we did your Walter Mitty episode, one thing I said was that even though there's some issues, the direction isn't one of them. And I think here, the direction's really good. It's not too standoutish, but if you look at it correctly, he has his little moments of surreal flourishment, and then morning broke, and the font just explodes, and then night fell. And
I'm so happy you brought that up. That was good. I was gonna say I'm so happy you brought that up because that was one thing that I specifically took note of was the text overs. There was the then night fell, and then the letters fall down on the screen, and then day broke, and then at the end, of course, when it's that huge wide shot of the tree with help, and the letters are jumping on a seismograph or something. It's great,
and it's just the right amount of silliness. For me, Son of Paleface takes it cranks it up to 11 with zaniness. This one has just enough. And then when you have serious tense moments, like when he's breaking into the Undertakers, you have dramatic lighting, tense music. You have setups and payoffs, like you've seen the cat already introduced, and then it comes into the room, and like these little things that are just setting up this building tension. Even though it's a comedic scene, there's still genuine building of tension in the scene, which in a lot of comedy movies they just probably wouldn't do nowadays. This is like, we don't need to do that. We don't need to actually worry about Bob Hope getting in trouble. We don't need to worry about him not being a coward. It's just like, can we make him make a dick joke? That's kind of comedy now. Like, that's like, hey, can we get Zac Efron and The Rock to make a dick and bulge joke instead of actual character? There's a lot of interesting direction choices here that could go unnoticed. It looks like, yes, it looks it's in a studio. There's obviously technical issues that you just have to brush aside because this is a film from 1948 on a somewhat low budget. Until Blazing Saddles, this was the highest grossing comedy western.
Yeah, the trivia point that I read called it a parody.
It is, because it's a satire parody on The Virginian, loosely. It even got remade, this movie, into The Shakiest Gun in the West with Don Knotts, which is not good. Yeah, it's not good. That movie focuses more on, instead of him being a coward, it's just him is nervous, and that's less interesting.
And you said everyone hates him for some reason?
And everyone's really mean to Don Knotts. Everyone's really mean to him. On this movie, no one's mean to Bob Hope, necessarily. He just gets in real life or death situations.
He's a fraud.
He's a fraud without knowing it.
Yeah.
That's the nugget of joy in this for me that really rings true. It's like he is unaware of his situation, and yet he's going to go through with it because he thinks. There's a great line in movies like this, in movies in general. I always love a line or a character beat, an action or inaction that just you can look at and go, this defines the character here. And early on in the movie, he has that one line where he goes, I'm going to head back east where men may not be men, but they're certainly not corpses, and I don't want to be that either. And that's just like, that's who he is. That's exactly the kind of guy he is at this moment. He's a guy who does not want to be dead. And then later, he dresses, he fights the medicine man, goes back into a sure death scenario to actually do the right thing, which he wouldn't have done at the beginning when he ran away from the town like a coward. It's these little things that you go, remember when comedy movies had scripts? Even though he's ad-libbing, remember when they had arcs and development and 3 acts? Man, I miss it. Bartek, what were some issues with this movie that you had? If any? Because I do have some issues, like I said, technical ones. There are some gags that obviously just don't work as strongly, or there's like a translation of time that isn't there necessarily, or the villains, there are none, which I feel like I toss and turn on. Like sometimes I'm like, I wish there was a central antagonist in this movie that they could spar against.
I guess the film would argue that those 2 guys who you see occasionally are the
Well,
villains.
there's 3 technically. You have Big Joe, who has a shootout with him in the town. He's an antagonist for like 1 act of the movie. Then you have the guy painting on the wall. And then you have like those 2 guys on the wagon train. That's kind of it.
Considering that at the very beginning of the film,
and the Native Americans, but they're more of a reactionary antagonism more than we are pursuing him on purpose. They're more like he's in our camp.
Yeah, but I'm just saying I would argue because the very first scene of the film is Calamity Jane being told like her mission. It's like there are some people giving weapons to other people. Find out who they are and stop them, and we find out these 2 guys are the people. So, and they're after the heroes. So I would say they're antagonists. I honestly,
They're pretty forgettable though.
Yeah, that's my point. Like I find them forgettable, but at the same time, like Bartek's saying, it doesn't matter. You don't really need an antagonist, but we're used to these things, so you kind of want something there. But at the same time, do you need it? Not really. But it would be nice if there was something there.
Yeah. Honestly, not too many issues. Maybe just some sequences going on a bit too long. Like earlier on, Julio was saying that he preferred Bob Hope before he was super confident. And in the scene where he's dressed up as a cowboy and he's like being a hero and stuff, there are a lot of funny stuff there. But I feel like And I guess this does go with the confidence thing, but it goes on for maybe a little bit too long.
Are you talking about the sequence too, where they're doing the shootout? I love that
Oh,
sequence.
the shootout's great, but I mean, like
the whole not finding each other but so close to each other.
Yeah. I feel like maybe it goes a little bit too long, but honestly, it's nothing I'd be, complaining about.
Yeah.
Generally solid film.
Like I said, my problems with this movie fall to just things that you either don't really need and we're more accustomed to. Like you could argue this should have more primary antagonists that actually have personality or matter. At the same time, I don't think you really need to. It just doesn't feel like there's a place necessarily that we need to have this. We don't need that villain painting on the wall to be like a mustache twirling antagonist that is prominent. We just need him to be in that one scene where he's like, okay, get Joe onto him, and that's kind of it. Like, we don't need much more. I feel like obviously there's a technical issues that, like, obviously, there's like the line on the screen when the arrow comes to hit the tree. There's all these things that kind of give away like when they're going to do practical effects, but that's like
oh, you mean like markers and stuff?
Yeah, but that's fine because this is from 1948. I'm not expecting CGI woozer.
Dude,
I'm just
from
saying like these are things that you just go, okay, there's going to be some technical things that aren't up to snuff. You just have to accept that, or you just can't, because there are some people who just can't accept old movies. Like one of our friends who studied film just says, I cannot watch movies that are in black and white. And I'm like, why did you study film? But some people have their preferences.
I was gonna say, for an old film, the things that they were doing with the text, like and then Night Fell and the help thing, like I actually was like, whoa, I didn't know that would be possible back in 48.
Yeah, and it's
from a technical perspective, the one shot that really surprised me was when they jump off their horses on that, there's like that stack of logs,
yeah,
and they're laying down to keep away from everybody. And it's clearly
rear projection.
Yeah, exactly. But they're doing the thing where like the leaves are blowing by him and everything to the point where it looks really good. And especially when you put your mind in like, holy shit, this is before my parents were born, and this is looking really impressive right now.
Yeah, and there's I think there's fun stuff like that. Like I love seeing matte paintings, just like them, and there's like, hey, look, that sky's not real, but like, it at least feels real.
Oh yeah,
So
it was
good.
only really at the end of the film that I actually acknowledged, hey, these are sets.
There's something more charming to me about someone standing in a sound studio that's made to look like a field with sky in the background than someone in a green screen room where they have that weird like halo effect around their hair, and you just know that it's...
God, me and Julio got into like a serious argument about this on one of our last podcasts.
Who's right? Me.
Also, yeah, on green screens you don't really see where they're standing as much.
So you guys have some issues with...
Exactly.
Yeah.
You guys know what's
We
up.
know what's up. You guys obviously have some issues with this movie. Talk us through what they are.
Alex, do you have any serious issues?
The issues I could like speak to and say that I have are things that are coming through a 2019 mindset.
So you talk about the Native American depiction?
No, not necessarily. Well, there's that, but even that, it's not like it wasn't highly offensive. It wasn't like
There's
It
a
wasn't
rationale
in
behind
context. Yeah,
but it
see-
also wasn't like it wasn't the like to the umpteenth degree of them like walking around like scalping people and stuff like that. That's the least of my worries for this, because it wasn't anything that I could point to and be like, "Good, I'd be afraid to show this to a friend of mine."
it. No.
My issues with the movie are more in line with, if I could call them issues, are just things that it doesn't really matter for that time frame. Like the story progresses kind of fast in some parts. Like you mentioned, their love story is kind of wonky to say, but even then, I take solace in some things of like Jane being a badass, which wasn't necessarily par for the course back then.
Yeah.
And so there are things like storytelling mechanisms that were just of the time, and the only reason my brain computes them as issues is because I'm watching it through the lens of someone who's watching a movie in 2019. But for the time frame, for all of its potential flaws and failings and whatnot, it still finds a way to silver line those.
Yeah, see, I had more of an issue with the whole like Native American subplot, and I think that part of it is just, I mean, the movie is of its time in that sense, and that's fine, but it's funny because you haven't watched, Alex. You haven't watched the Coen Brothers movie on Netflix, the Ballad Buster Scruggs.
I have not.
Have you guys watched it?
I have.
Ryan.
I want to.
Bartek?
I have seen it. Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, this is not gonna spoil like anything, but one of the stories it features like actually probably like two of them Native Americans just as the enemy, sort of, right? But they're more depicted more of like a force of nature, you know,
Yeah.
and it's not. I mean, there's comedy in it, but there's nothing comedic about the fact that they're a threat. But I remember seeing online like kind of a little bit of an outrage and people saying like, "Man, it's the year 2018 and we're still depicting Native Americans as savages and whatever." And I was like, "Okay, you guys are overreacting. You know, it's a parody of a Western, and that's kind of like, you know, in a Western, Native Americans are the enemy, and really, you know, I imagine if you were living back then." You saw them like this, you know? So
Yeah.
at that time, I remember thinking that was an overreaction. But then now I'm watching this movie, and one of the big set pieces is this white guy killing, or well, thinking that he's killing a bunch of Native Americans. And I was conflicted about the fact that I was laughing about it.
Well, he does it by
chuckling.
accident. But he does it by accident, though. He doesn't fully realize that he's trailing gunpowder through their whole entire base.
Oh,
No,
no,
he's
I
talking
was
about
talking
the
about
shooting
the
scene.
Oh, the shooting scene.
yeah, where he
kills
becomes a
15
hero,
million.
right?
Right, but yeah, with 15 million.
Right.
Right.
So there's a part of the back of my brain that was just saying like, okay, this movie just made a comedic set piece out of the fact that, you know, there's a bunch of Native Americans getting slaughtered.
My argument to be that would be that it's not funny because they're Native Americans. It's funny because he's an idiot.
Yeah.
It's just
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I see. That was like the front of my brain was saying that, but the back of my brain, because we're like now at a position in you know, it's like it couldn't be helped back then that they happened to use, you know, Native Americans because of the genre and everything else. But right now, if you were making this movie today, you wouldn't make that choice. You know, because it's kind of it's like a trigger. It's like a special button that, you know, you probably shouldn't push anymore.
It's a trope too. Like, it's been done so many times in the Western genre that it's kind of like, yeah, we get it. Like, we get it. Maybe have a fresh take on it. The thing about it was with this, I was thinking about this. The thing about it is, this movie, I wouldn't say it itself is racist. It features bigotry and racism because this is a period piece movie. It would be inaccurate to have no racism towards these people from the white characters. The fact is, a lot of the things that are going on in this movie with white people trading weapons to them and causing, you know, stirs, that happened. They're using that, and of course this obviously has to accommodate the fact this is a parody of a well-known Western, which this is the storyline of. But I also think that, one, all the Native Americans are played by Native Americans, which was not as common in the 1940s. Usually they got Italians and Jews to play them. You don't have anyone doing over-the-top performances as the Native Americans. Like the chief, he's pretty understated considering what we're expecting. They're, I think, more of a force of nature, reactionary type thing. They're just a plot element, which you could say is, you know, problematic or troublesome. But again, do you want a 1940s movie to really delve deep into the Native American aspect, right? Considering Bob Hope movies.
Yeah. Oh, no. That's why I don't fault the movie for it. But you know, the fact that we're watching in 2019, it's just the kind of thing that it sparks. It's like, wow.
But,
you know, that's what it was like
It's
back then.
inherent.
yeah, I just don't
It's
think,
just
you know,
gonna
there's
happen.
anything... I get what you're saying. It's just, for me, it's just like, there's nothing really here that is that troublesome. Like, you could say him dressed up as the medicine man, but the film does a whole thing about him having to go do that. And the fact is, the irony is, they want to kill the medicine man. They don't want him back there. So there's that irony there too. And Bob Hope isn't being overly cartoonishly. He's just kind of trying to like get his way through and kind of slip in buttons and bows and hubby and all that. And that's kind of like, and then they want to burn him. And there's nothing too overtly racist in this movie. It's just, this is what the West was.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm trying to.
Yeah, and if I could,
Oh no! Now we have to fight over who talks.
It will be me. I win.
no, I'm the guest here. I don't want to step on your toes. Bartek, go
All
for
right,
it.
yeah. Well, I was basically going to say what Ryan said in a different way. This I didn't find it as troubling, I guess, simply because I just associate westerns with, oh, that's the period where people shot each other at bars or outside bars and no one really cared.
Yeah.
That's all. Yeah.
Yeah. What I was going to say to kind of tie it into the beginning of the podcast, because it's fresh on my mind, Angry Boys and Chris Lilly's portrayal of the rapper Smouse and playing blackface on that show, that is something I watch and I go, ew, this isn't that good.
It's divisive.
At no point in this movie, at no point in this movie did I say, oh man, this is really messed up. This shouldn't be happening. It's just one of those things, I think, especially now, you're so inclined to immediately assume something's offensive if they have the Native American on screen with, the big headdress and the face paint and everything. But exactly to what you were saying, Ryan, the story isn't to make fun of them for being Native Americans. It's just the fact that these Native Americans are here and it's part of the story.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what happened to me was not that I never felt that the movie was making fun of Native Americans. It was just that the fact that they had that comedic set piece set around sort of, and I know it's me overthinking it, but it couldn't be helped. Like, it's set around a Native American massacre.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But of course,
That's
the film has to go out of its way to, one, they started it. It's not like Bob Hope started attacking them out
that
of
made
nowhere.
me laugh.
Yeah.
That's a great line.
Yeah. The great line. Yeah, and like Alex said before, the scene obviously is revolving around how much of an idiot Bob Hope is. He even has that great line of, oh, how brilliant. 1,000 Indians versus one coward, and just like dives into a barrel. and just
And he also has the line of he cocks the gun. I hope this is loaded. I wish I was too.
that whole sequence I actually did at university, from the shaving to the end I did at university for film studies of a breakdown of a scene. And we had to watch the scene, and then I had to hand in the essay. And we watched the scene. Everyone found it really funny. Well, everyone found it hilarious. And the film teacher guy was like, "Are you sure?" He was kind of like, "Are you sure?" Just like kind of, he was basically saying, "Are you sure a bland 1940s comedy that's not shot with any extraordinary things can be worth a film essay?" And then I gave him,
Is it a film too?
Young guy.
Young guy.
So
okay.
then I handed my essay and I got like 94 out of 100 for that. And I'm like, yeah, you're right, I can. Because there's so much nuances to just that scene and a lot of scene. Like you said, this is a pleasant movie. There's chuckles all the way through. There's a lot of belly laughs. Here's the thing I can say. A lot of modern comedies, I don't get a chuckle out of them, let alone a belly laugh. I've seen quite a few movies this year, and the one that made me laugh the most was Parasite. And that movie isn't an out-and-out comedy.
That movie's great.
It is great. No, I'm not saying, but like, the one that isn't an out-and-out comedy has made me laugh more than comedy movies of the last, 5-10 years. There's exceptions to the rules, and usually those ones are ones where they have scripts. I've noticed, whenever, Lord and Miller are working on a movie, the guys who did 21 Jump Street and Lego Movie and all that, and Spider-Verse, I get laughs because, oh, look, there's a written joke here. Maybe I'm just used to wanting written jokes. I'm not saying I don't like improvised comedy. There's a lot of Will Ferrell stuff I have liked. Like, I like Anchorman. But in those movies, they still have character arcs. Ron Burgundy learns not to be such a misogynistic asshole to a certain degree. But what does he learn in Daddy's Home? That he should get on with Mark Wahlberg. That's it.
Semi-Pro is my favorite Will Ferrell movie, and I think it's because it's the most tightly scripted. It's the most tightly structured.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of like kept on the background for a lot of it.
I think...
Go on. You really had me thinking there. I was about to say, you've really got me going now. I'm trying to think of the last comedy I genuinely enjoyed, and I was going to say Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but that wasn't meant to be a comedy.
It had comedic moments, but I can't, there's obviously some there, I find stuff like The Lobster and Swiss Army Man really funny, but those are weird. But in mainstream comedy movie, I always point to a few that I go, these are ones that I point to and go, yep, those are great. Galaxy Quest, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Bowfinger, a few others, and it's just those are your standard Hollywood fare comedy movies that are actually funny, that I find this is what I want from standard comedy. When it comes to The Paleface, my biggest criticism is it's called The Paleface and not just Paleface. I think Paleface is just better. I've always called it Paleface, and then it's like the Paleface. Then the sequel goes son of Paleface, not son of the Paleface. And I'm like, it just throws me off to say the or the Paleface. It always feels like it doesn't flow as nicely as just Paleface.
For the past 5 years,
It's like Facebook just dropped the.
Drop the
The Facebook. You were saying, Bartek?
For the past 5 years, for some reason, I thought it was called Old Paleface. I have no idea.
No,
why.
I think it's just because it's old. It's an old movie.
Ryan, that movie you lent me was old.
Yes. Anything else we want to mention about this movie? There's a lot of stuff there.
There was
there.
one scene that I especially liked that we haven't talked about yet. It was the wedding scene.
Oh, you mean the static shot of their hands and
Yeah.
how that is funnier than anything Will Ferrell's done in the last 10 years?
Oh, that is great.
I really enjoyed that scene. It felt like the experimental scene of the film because
Yeah.
it was more about like the lines and what's happening on the not face area, I guess.
What cracks me about that scene
Just
is...
how big of a doofus he is.
What cracks me about that scene is each dumb thing has some internal logic of why he would do that, even though it's dumb. Like, you may now kiss, and he kisses him. That's a
Not
kappa.
me.
But one that cracks me up is when you see the old priest's hand wanting the ring, and he has the ring, and he puts it in his vest and grabs out his pocket watch and gives him his pocket watch. And it's like the internal logic of that one is freaking loose as shit. And it instantly cracks me. I lose it every time because it's like, what was his thought process there? Like, he wants to know the time. He's obviously like, the ring, and he's like using his hand to gesture, and he gives him his pocket watch instead. And you're like, why? You're an idiot. But I love him. He's just so adorably dumb, but also the right amount of cunning and cowardly. I think a lot of comedy movies today are afraid of having just a coward as your lead. Like, people like Chevy Chase would bank on their character's ignorant cowardice as the thing that propels it. I don't know, like... Caddyshack, but that was, back in the day. But, like, nowadays, I'm, like, trying to think of comedic actors who are just good at, like, A-grade comedic actors. Not like your, like, character actor ones, but, like, big ones that are just banking on that they're cowards. And it's weird to say that when George Clooney does comedies, that's what he does. Like in Hail Caesar, and it's weird.
Yeah, he
he's
plays
not,
kind of a schmuck.
and he's not a comedic actor, you would say. He's an actor. He's just a regular actor.
You brought up Steve Carell before we started recording.
I think Steve Carell, maybe sometimes, but more he's just pathetic, or back in the day when he did stuff like 40-Year-Old Virgin. But that's it. Like, I kind of miss this. Obviously, I miss this kind of comedy. I wish a lot more movies could just make me chuckle. Bob Hope's cracking so many jokes that I could not keep writing notes, because if I did, it would just be the whole entire script. It would just be every line he spoke in this movie. There wasn't everything he said. Just like, there's this one bit where he's at the dentist's office, and the cowboy puts his hat over his mouth, and he starts to drill inside the hat, and he's like, and he smacks it down. Or when he's with the first client, or when he's with the cowboy, and he opens his mouth, and he says, hello, and then hello comes out of the guy's mouth. It's like, oh my god, there's an echo in here. It's like, why is that there? Because it's funny.
There was also the echo when he was up in the tree at the end.
Yeah. Any other comedy things or things you guys want to talk about the Paleface?
I was just gonna say, to kind of add on, not necessarily about Paleface, just to kind of add on about a modern approach to it, and like you said about, if I wrote down everything that was funny, I would just regurgitate the entire script. I can't speak to the cowardice thing, or the, casting a character that is a coward, but I think the closest we come to things like this in a modern era are things written by Tina Fey, where it seems like everything is just funny consistently. Like 30 Rock and Kimmy Schmidt are both prime examples.
But those are TV shows, not movies. Her movies aren't as funny, for me.
That's a very, 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 very fair point. I was just about to say what you just said about if I wrote down everything. That was the first thing that came to mind. Yeah, completely agree with their movies, that the TV shows are where it shines.
I don't know that. I know, it's not like Woody Allen qualifies as like modern comedy anymore. But his characters are cowards.
Yeah.
So you have that. I mean, they're intellectual cowards, but they're still cowards.
I find more they're selfish. More so than cowards a lot of the times. I guess it's also different because Woody Allen puts his characters more in situational comedy modes of like, here's a dinner table and Christopher Walken's here. While this is like let's chuck Bob Hope in an old western, or let's chuck Bob Hope in a pirate epic, or let's chuck Bob Hope in Zanzibar. Like, these are like weird things. It's like, let's chuck this random person. It's like how Will Ferrell's job now is which career we can give him. We've given him race car driver. We've given, when's he going to do astronaut? You know, like, we've given him Darren from Bewitched. We've given him all of the jobs he can do.
All right, let's watch our tone about the Bewitched movie, because that was a
We
good
did
one,
it on
but,
we did it on our show. Thank you.
Unappreciated masterpieces.
You need to listen to it, because
that's good.
we have a mental breakdown as to what Steve Carell is in that movie, because it makes no sense.
We had the
Colin.
whole film perfectly mapped out, but there was just one mystery. Yeah.
One mystery, but that's for another time. Anything else you guys want to bring up? Any funny moments or issues?
I'm actually surprised that we haven't mentioned the mix-up, the Three's Company mix-up sequence where he thinks that there's like a big Native American that's infiltrated his
That's amazing.
his
yeah.
hotel room or whatever, and
cabin.
he thinks that's Jane Russell.
Yeah, the cabin.
Yeah, the cabin, and it's just like
but he whacks him on the back of the head,
I-
so he buys it completely.
I know. I kept waiting for the big reveal where he was gonna notice, and the scene kept going and going and going, and it was like, I can't believe that they're managing to keep this misunderstanding going for so long. It was great, and then he actually kisses the dude, right? I was
Yeah.
not expecting that on a 1947, 1948 movie. It was
An
Well, he kissed the
interracial
priest, but yeah.
an interracial kiss on screen, huh? So yeah, and I also love the gag too of the Native American had intoxicated on laughing gas, so he had that,
and he never knew what it was.
and his giggle.
Yeah.
His giggle is amazing. I love. My mum loves this line the most. It says, "Oh, darling, you must be chilly. You're blushing all the way down to your little tootsies." And it's just like, how dumb can you be? Oh my God, you put your hair up in braids. And it's like, you are such an idiot. And I love the capper to that is not just him getting knocked out. Jane Russell the next morning coming in having left him, and she's like, and he's reacting to her like, "I had this amazing night with you," and she's like, "He is crazy. I don't know what the hell he's thinking of." Yeah, that scene is... I could see people getting divisive about that. But again, it's like, what's the divisive thing of, oh, there's a Native American in this comedy scene? Like, yeah, like, the scene is about Bob Hope being an idiot.
Yeah, like, oh, how
When there's-
convenient. He's closing his eyes.
When there's a genuine threat right next to him. Like, this is a scout coming in to scout them out and then come attack them later in the morning. And he is just lapping up in the joyousness of the humor of the scene. And I love... Also, the guy who played that character, when he starts, like, groping his, like, upper arms, like, "Oh, those little dresses, they sure do hide the muscles," he, like, just slaps him. He's like, "How dare you touch me?" Like, he's, like, really offended. But then also, when he starts playing with his braids and he can kind of understand that he's being complimented, he's also, like, "Oh, okay." Like, he's kind of getting, like, overwhelmed with the compliments. And it's like, this is a comedic performance here. That guy could have just been, "I'm a serious Native American guy," but the laughing gas, the not liking being touched, but also loving the affection, and it's all great. Yeah, I can't believe we almost skipped over that scene. That's a spicy meatball of a scene.
You alluded to it earlier, but yeah.
I did allude to it earlier. Anything else? I think that's about it, isn't it? I mean, I could just keep going on about remember that scene and how great it was.
Remember the walking bush? Yeah.
Can you... Oh, what... Must be a Virginia creeper.
Again, that's the scene you talk about all the time. Yeah.
Can you guys, before we wrap up and go to the plug zone, can either of you remember the pieces of advice he was given to fight against Joe?
If I remember, he pulls from his left, so lean to the
Yep.
right, or is it back?
That's
Do I have
it,
it
that's
backwards?
You nailed it.
Then there's
wind.
is it like the wind,
Ye-
right? And then the one that's at the top, like is it like he's taller, so you point up, or you shoot from the top?
There's
Crouch.
yeah,
He crouches.
I
he
just
crouches.
all I can see in my mind. Yeah, they.
Right, so you shoot from the top.
You stand on your toes.
and then
There's a wind from the east,
stand
so
your
aim.
toes.
It's just ludicrous.
So he's like he ends up like walking like Gollum across the.
My favorite befuddled moment of that is when he starts mixing it up and he just goes, "Okay, so the sun is coming in from the east, so I better stand on the wind and shoot at his toes." And he was like, and he goes, "Yeah," like he thinks that's the
Yeah.
correct one. And it's just
The,
like,
the punchlines are when like it doesn't make sense, like shoot with the toes or something.
and aim at the wind, and yeah.
And also the actual physical comedy of him when he actually does fire at Joe and he has no idea what he's doing and just does like a twirl and shoots the gun
and he
far
falls
into the
straight
air.
down to the ground.
Yeah.
One little thing about Joe I really liked was when he went to the when he went
Undertaker.
to the Undertaker later, and he's talking to the dead body, who we find out is Joe, about like, oh my god, they got dynamite, and he looks at it's like Joe, and he's like, fool, like he thinks like, what an idiot. I've nailed this.
Also, just before the fight, the Undertaker smile like, oh, he's gonna win.
Because he always wins.
Yeah.
The Undertaker always wins these things. Yeah, that's about it with The Paleface, a surprisingly entertaining movie that I personally think still has a lot of merit and holds up quite well. I think, if anything, we've just explored that this is a damning indictment on modern comedy and films. Because if this film in which Bob Hope is just slinging out one-liners that are still funny, or comedic set pieces of physical comedy that doesn't really lean too heavy into slapstick, like the dentist scene isn't slapstick, that's just physical comedy mayhem, that we just can't get in modern movies, what does that say? Like, I don't know, like, I feel like a lot of other genres are doing really well, but then it's like comedy is like in the toilet a lot of the time, like mainstream Hollywood comedy movies. There's still great comedies out there that are more like your more hidden movies that you actually have to go search for, that get no attention. But what I'm saying is, Jonah Hill, come on, man, pick up your game, be funny. That's all I'm saying.
Remake the
with
Paleface.
Jonah Hill.
Man, Jonah Hill, I don't know, he could do it. He's a smart mouth, but he's not cowardly enough.
He's great. He's fallen into that exact same position you've just been talking about this entire time.
Yeah.
And also, yeah, I think all the things you've described, I keep finding myself right now mad that Robert Downey Jr. became Iron Man, because I think he could have been a perfect cowardice comedic actor for a new generation.
Like in Heart and Souls.
Tropic Thunder.
Oh, I thought of Heart and Souls, the more sad comedy in which he's also a coward. He's too afraid.
No, that's a really good call too. I don't know why he's just been on my mind when we keep describing this as someone,
Alex,
a modern actor that can do
he's
that.
Dr. Dolittle.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
so
he's
Well-
Dr.
he can-
Dolittle.
He can slide back into that.
He's Dr. Dolittle now.
He's too far gone.
he's too beyond. Well, before we get into the plug zone, I'm gonna give a fun little trivia fact about Bob Hope. This Oscar that he got for like performing this song of Buttons and Bows was the closest he ever got to getting an actual Oscar, because he did two dramatic performances that if you're into American film history, Seven Little Boys and Bo James, people still are angry that he didn't get an Oscar nomination or win simply because he was a comedian. He hosted the Oscars the most, still hasn't been defeated. He hosted like 24 times or something. Ludicrous. And this movie is the closest he ever actually got to getting an actual Oscar, and it's a song, not on his acting or comedy
And
or,
it probably
or anything.
And it probably went to the writers of the song, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably. Yeah. So fun, sad, interesting little fact. And his last movie was Spies Like Us with Chevy Chase. There you go. And his last TV thing was The Simpsons. Let's not forget, he was in The Simpsons.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to plug it if you didn't. He introduces the troops to Little Miss Springfield, and one of the troops goes, "Little Miss Springfield."
Well, we're going to take it into the plug zone for another brilliant podcast. So, Bartek, are you ready?
Wait. Let me just...
Okay, he's adjusting
Now I'm
himself.
ready.
Okay, here we go.
Hey guys, it's Kyle and Nick, and we're from Dem Fancy Dinosaurs, a weekly comedy podcast revolving around movies, TV shows, and pop culture. We release a new episode every Thursday, and you can find us on Apple Podcasts? Why did you say that like a question? I don't know. Okay, anyway, yes, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any of the podcatchers. Or you can look up www.demfancydinosaurs.com. Thanks guys, stay fancy, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Well, that was wonderful. Bartek, you can be unready now. You can untuck your shirt. You can put your penis back in your pants.
Well, it's soft now,
It's
so...
sit down.
it's soft now. Thank you guys for joining us on this discussion. I was really worried at the beginning when it was like, oh, Julio's seething, and I'm like, Man, last time I recommended a movie I really liked was Falling Down, and that whole episode was me having to defend the merits of Falling Down against people were like, "Oh, you don't get it, man. We live in America, we get it." I'm like, dude, I understand, but this is a movie.
Oh, Alex, you should listen to their episode of Falling Down.
You should watch Falling Down.
I think I told you on Twitter.
Well, Falling Down
Alex
is
loves
effing
it.
incredible. Yeah.
I rewatched it before I listened to their episode, and as I rewatched, I don't know when was the last time you watched it, but I had a lot of thoughts about it, and then their episode, it's a very
debate heavy.
It's a very interesting conversation because Ryan was on the defense, and then the guests were just attacking it, and I was I was with him most of the time. I was like, yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Before they started, did he just do the Bob Duvall? Let's go!
So, thank you guys. We actually had I was worried oh no, we're going to get into we have to talk about this movie not being good. But in fact, everyone seemed to enjoy it, have a pleasant discussion.
great.
Hopefully, you guys...
Yeah, how could you be mad about this movie?
I don't know.
It's lovable.
I mean, it sucked, but
If you guys if listening people, you guys, Bartek, check out Son of Paleface. A lot more people like that one. That's higher rated, and a lot of people like that one more than I do. So maybe a personal taste thing. It just has a few more of these Hollywood things or these things that I don't like too much. It's a little too absurd, but it is really funny at the same time. There's a gag in that I lose my mind, where they're in a car, an old-fashioned car with the big wheels, and the wheel spins off, and Bob Hope lassos the I don't know, the shaft, the rod for the tire from inside the car and pulls it up from inside the car, and they put a wagon from a carriage onto the wheel, and he's like, quickly, but come get it attached before physics realizes that this is impossible for me to do. And it's the absurdity of that. So check out Son of Paleface. I don't know if we'll cover it on the show.
How many men does he kiss in that one?
He
More
kisses
than two?
a horse. So
Was it a male horse?
yes,
Okay,
Trigger.
that's worth 3.
The horse's name is Trigger. So, because Roy Rogers, the singing cowboy, who we just talked about Buster Scruggs earlier, Buster Scruggs was very much inspired by Roy Rogers, and Elton John even had a song about him. The singing cowboy. So, thank you guys for joining us. Give us some more info on your podcast, where we can find it, and where we can find you guys on the social medias.
We are on every podcatcher. Just search for The Contrarians. It'll be the podcast that has the logo. It's a little red tomato looking in the mirror.
Yeah, I thought it was a
Sees
Jiminy
green
Cricket.
splotch reflection.
It's like,
Everyone I've showed it to was like, that's Jiminy Cricket, right? And I'm like, no, apparently.
well, I'm glad you're showing our logo
I was
around.
about to say, don't let Disney find out about that. We'll be shut down pretty quick. WeAreTheContrarians.com. WeAreTheContrarians.com is our main website where you can download our episodes, find all our contact information. We're on Twitter at Contrarian Prime, and our Facebook page is
Contrarian Prime, also Facebook.com/Contrarian Prime. And our email address is contrarianprime@gmail. No, we are the Contrarians at gmail.com.
You sure?
Thank you.
You sure about that?
We are the Contrarians Prime.
99% sure.
Could you tease our listening people with some future movies you're gonna be putting on your show? Can you tease us?
When is this dropping?
This is dropping in
once
like
this come
a
out.
week or two.
About a week and a half from the recording date.
Oh, so the most recent ones will be the original Fly from 1958.
Ooh, Vincent
with
Price.
Vincent Price, and
That's right up your alley.
Yeah.
I love it. I love that movie.
Well, we're going to be dropping also in the near future a commentary track for Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
Oh, okay.
And then
And we just recorded Adventureland.
incredible movie. And
That's his contrarian view.
Going into the
It's an incredible movie. It's a contrarian view. Okay, I can't wait for him to give his real opinion.
oh no, that's the real Monty.
That's
right
what he's
there.
saying.
And then going into the new year, I very moronically and basically signed up for a bit of torture to catch up on the Marvel Universe, and we'll be doing Endgame to bring in the new year.
I heard about this, and I've seen
Endgame is my pale
I've
face.
seen Alex respond on Twitter about his disdain for certain aspects that he's seen throughout the MCU. My biggest complaint
Yes.
is they have a list of all these essential movies, and Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is not on there, and I think that's the one that... No, seriously, I think that's the one out of all of them that actually gives a good setup and payoff for things in Infinity War with Thanos. That's all I'm saying. I think you're skipping out on that, and there's a disagreement there.
Well,
I think that's all.
the problem is that time is of the essence, and so I had to, like, when I made the list for Alex, I had to just give him the quality, because that's the other problem. I agree with you that plot-wise, Guardians of the Galaxy 2 has some stuff that pays off really well, but I don't think it's a very well-made movie.
Oof.
And so if I give him movies that are
Oh,
not
so
even...
which of them are? I'm sorry.
Excuse me. Ant-Man and the Wasp. Thank you. It had Michelle Pfeiffer in it, and I like her.
I love it, but I can't give it to Alex because, he doesn't have time. I just need to give him, like, the greatest hits, and then the rest he has to go through Wikipedia.
Alex,
so
just
that
cut
he can
down on the
make it.
WWE, and you could fit it in. Okay? Just cut down on the wrestling.
No, I don't know about that.
Well, thank you guys very much for coming on. Now, Bartek and I are getting into our celebration for our next episode is our 200th episode of our show.
Wow.
Of content we've pumped out. That includes all of them that we've done. And
Even the announcements.
even the announcement, probably. That's an episode that goes for like an hour. So,
Fair enough.
Bartek,
Yes.
it's a listening people's choice one, but since it's since it's a milestone, we're overriding the people's choice, and really we're not, because the people are screaming, do a Paul Giamatti movie. It's been like since Big Mama's House since you did it, and you've only done 4 or 3. Now you're going to do a 4th. We want Paul. We want Paul. That's what they're screaming out. That's all I'm hearing these days is Paul Giamatti needs to return. We are going to be doing, and it was a toss-up, Bartek, between a renowned Paul Giamatti movie and a renowned Paul Giamatti movie. We are doing the renowned Paul Giamatti movie, Lady in the Water.
Okay.
M. Night Shyamalan's Lady in the Water with stuttering Paul himself, a bug.
Somebody's got to do it.
Somebody's got to do it. I had to do it to him, yeah. Other choice was Sideways, and I thought, here's the thing. With our show, we're always delving into the positives of movies that have a lot of criticism towards them, and Lady in the Water, we have to do it. If we're going to do 200, I think it would be a betrayal if we did what is considered to be a genuinely great movie. We should do one that's a divisive movie. There are people who like Lady in the Water, and everyone says Paul Giamatti's great in it. And I haven't seen it.
So in other words, unappreciated masterpiece.
We're doing an unappreciated masterpiece in the Pictures Powwow format next episode.
That's good because we've already done sort of a mystery box in this format.
So make sure, listening people and you contrarians, to watch Lady in the Water so you can be fully prepped on our 200th episode discussion.
If
on
they're contrarians,
it.
they won't watch it then.
Oh, okay. Or they will, and they will hate it. Contrarian to what we want, which is to be appreciative of something M. Night did after he made Unbreakable.
Well, Stuart Little.
Stuart Little he wrote. The biggest twist. Listening people, make sure to check out the Contrarians. Like they said, we'll have the information in our description. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter. Just look up Spit and Polish Presents. You'll find us pretty easy. We are on all the pod catchers or platforming sites available as well, except for SoundCloud. We don't do that filthy thing. And we don't have a website because we don't need one, but maybe one day, if we do, the background will just be the same image of Paul Giamatti's eyes bugging out. That would be it.
Also, Google Top Polish Podcast just for fun because
We're in the top 10 Polish podcasts. Are you guys? Didn't think so. So take that down a peg. You can email us.
God bless.
I'll go on. You wanna come back? Wrestling?
Oh, I just said God bless.
God bless. What's that in Polish, Bartek?
Let's see.
What's God?
Boże.
Boże. Sounds like a stew. I've had some nice broże here.
No, Boże.
Boże. Boże sounds like a shoe brand now.
And also, of course, there's like the reaction like, oh, Boże.
Oh, Boże. So make sure to check out that. Our email address is spitandpolished@gmail.com. Email us through your opinions on movies, your death threats, recommendations for movies, because
They all go on the list.
we got a list. As you heard earlier, I'm afraid of some of them. Don
Yeah,
Cacino.
So much that the next recommendation is one that you picked out of nowhere.
Yeah. Well, it's our anniversary, dude.
Yeah.
So until next time, listening people, remember that east is east and west is west and the wrong road I have chose. See, I have a singing career now, Bartek. Where's my Oscar?
Yeah, but I have a soft dick because we said that earlier.